Okay, folks, over here. This would have been the court of the Gentiles who had been here at the time of the Lord Jesus. So big open area, and around the edge there would have been a colonnade. Do you see the colonnade around here? See a kind of shady area where you can sit out of the sun and out of the rain. So there would have been those all around the edge. And you can see the remains of some of those columns here. And it would have been much like it is today. You've got tourists, pilgrims, checking out what's going on, all very interested. You've got local people coming here to worship, people sitting around talking about religious things, and soldiers keeping an eye on things. So this is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So this is the main place of worship here in Jerusalem for people from a Muslim background.
It's not that one?
No, so that's a shrine, this is a mosque. So that's a shrine, it commemorates Muhammad's ascension to heaven, and it's night flight here from Mecca. But it's not a place where they have preaching and that sort of thing.
So what they use?
They go sit there, reflect, pray. Whereas this is a mosque, it's a big meeting room. So the Dome of the Rock is built over a big stone, the rock, that is believed to be the place in Jewish tradition where Abraham sacrificed or bound Isaac to sacrifice him, in Islamic tradition where he bound Ishmael to sacrifice him. This is Mount Moriah. But in Genesis it talks about the mountains of Moriah. It uses a plural. So we don't know that it was exactly here, it would have been somewhere in this range. But Chronicles talks about the place where the temple is built as Mount Moriah. So 2 weeks ago there were lots of fighting. So that's why at the moment you can only see older men up here. They're only allowing older men up here at the moment. Men over the age of 50 who can't run too fast.
Who've been fighting?
So some Jewish people tried to bring a sheep up here to sacrifice it, which is against the Jewish law anyway, because the temple's not built, so they can't sacrifice it. And they also wanted to bring up a foundation stone for a new temple, so they're going to knock down this one and build a new one. So that causes quite a lot of tension when that happens. So then the police get it from both sides. If you look around us, you can see groups of men reading the Quran and praying together, just as there would have been groups of people here at the time of Jesus reading the Old Testament and praying together. So if we look out this way, we can see the Mount of Olives. So we were up here before looking down, weren't we? And the Golden Gate is just below us there. We walked under here yesterday. But if we'd been here at the time of Jesus, we wouldn't have been able to come any closer to the temple than we are now. There was a low wall that had an inscription that said, no foreigners are permitted to go beyond here. If they do, they will be responsible for their own death. Only Jews could go beyond there. It was the dividing wall of separation. And so we would have been standing here as Gentile tourists, like the Ethiopian eunuch probably did. So he would have stood here and seen a building even bigger than that one, with a roof slightly higher than the pinnacle there, going out as wide as the Dome of the Rock, but a big box shape, taking a lot more space than the Dome of the Rock. It would have had white marble at the top, gold fixed into it, and gold all around the edge of the roof. And he would have been squinting to look at it because it would have been so bright. Now, if we'd been here at the time of Solomon, the temple would only have been about the height of that lower dome in front of the Dome of the Rock. Herod rebuilt the second temple to make it even grander than Solomon's. So you can see why people got so upset when Jesus said, tear this temple down and I'll build it again in 3 days. It's an ancient, beautiful building, one of the most beautiful buildings in the world, I think. With this beautiful golden roof, blue tiling. It's built on the site of the ancient temple, and by building it there, it aims to communicate that Islam is the fulfillment of Judaism. And so this building was designed to communicate the way that Islam was replacing the location of Judaism and the buildings of Christianity. And if you look at the top of it, you can see written around it a message which says things like, God is not three, he is one. It is not fitting for him to have a son. Give a couple for a week and they go home and they write a book. Then they go home and write a short newspaper article on how to solve the Israeli-Palestinian problem. They come. Now if you look at these stones here, you see they're much bigger than the other paving stones around, and they look a lot older. And then look at this line along here. You see there's a dead straight line, but these stones don't line up with that line. So this area up here is lovely and square, except for this little section here. Can you see that? And so the thinking is that these stones are probably from Solomon's temple, and at the time of Solomon, this is where the edge of the Temple Mount would have been, before Herod expanded the Temple Mount. Does that make sense? So that's all I can show you of Solomon's temple, I'm afraid. No one's allowed to do archaeological investigations up here, because the guys who are here are like, no, it's good as it is. We're really not interested in it being dug up. Well, it's a stunning model, isn't it? So 2 centimetres here is the equivalent to 1 metre. And this is Jerusalem as it was in 70 AD, just before the Romans destroyed it. There's one big difference to how it would have been at the time of Jesus, and that's this wall here, starting at this corner, running right round the outside, round to those towers over there. That wouldn't have been there at the time of Jesus. That was built by Herod Agrippa in the 40s. So that would have been there at the time of the apostles. Paul would have seen that, but Jesus wouldn't have done so. Now, obviously we can see here the temple. That's a brilliant reconstruction, isn't it? You see how huge it was, even bigger than the Dome of the Rock. And you can see the massive courts and the colonnade around the edge. See how that would be a beautiful shaded place to sit and have meetings and that sort of thing. You see how the colonnade that end is a double-decker colonnade. So that upstairs section is where the Sanhedrin would have been. You see this red roof building here? So that is the pools of Bethesda. Do you remember we were there? Yeah. And you can see how it's got colonnades all around it. So that would have been outside the walls at the time of Jesus. And then do you see there's a kind of cliff face up here? We'll just go around a little further so we can see it. So that's where there's that cliff with the kind of skull face and where the garden tomb. Okay, well guys, we're looking down now onto King Herod's palace. You see those 2 red roof buildings there facing each other and a big courtyard there. So it seems likely that that would have been the place of Jesus' trial. That's probably where Pontius Pilate would have been staying. If not, it's where Herod Antipas would have been staying. And so one of his trials would have taken there either way. You can see the 3 pretty towers where his troops are based. Now, you can see the temple there, where the Dome of the Rock is today. So just this side of the temple is where the western wall is today. This is the upper city, this area of red-roofed houses over here. And that's where that posh house that we went to visit yesterday would have been. Very cool model, isn't it?
So big.
It's huge, isn't it? Wow, there's a giant bird. So up the red-roofed houses, that's the posh area of town. That's Mayfair. That's a posh area of London. It's an English joke. Doesn't make sense to anybody who's not English, I'm sorry. But then in front of it you can see the greyer buildings, and that's where the normal people lived. That's the lower city. Then over this way you can see some palaces. Do you see, just on that spur of rock at the end there? So that's where Queen Helena of Adiabane's palace would have been. Some of us saw where that would have been yesterday. And that's where David's city would have been. That's the oldest part of the city. Now, just in the corner down the bottom here, can you see a pool with some steps around it? That's the pool of Siloam. It's going down to it, and it would have been a bit lower down, as it's been found. But you can see the 3 valleys that Jerusalem is built on. So we've got the Kidron Valley going that way, the Valley of Gehenna going that way, and then going up the middle, with little bridges over it, is the Valley of the Cheesemakers. And so that's the other valley. Gradually that's been filled in over the years. There's not much left of that valley now. You can also see the steps in front of the temple where we were yesterday, and the gates that people went in to go up to the Temple Mount. Anyone see the detail they've got wrong? The translation of that?
There was 3 gates.
3 gates, absolutely, full marks.
Wow,
Yeah.
well done.
Yeah. So 3 gates off to the right going up in. Now, we're looking down now on the temple. It's a massive area, isn't it? 23 acres. About nearly a quarter of the whole of the city at the time of Jesus. Remember, this area to the right wasn't inside the walls at the time of Jesus. You can see how the temple's surrounded by walls. So you come out of these exits here, the little bunker-like things there, and you come out into the court of the Gentiles. That's where you and I could go. That's where Jesus drove out the money changers and the sellers of sheep. Because he said that my house should be a house of prayer for all nations. Isaiah 56 verse 8. But then as you approach the temple, can you see a low balustrade? Only Jews could go past there. And then you see a high wall with a gate in the front of it. So only Jewish men could go inside there. And then there's another courtyard actually round the temple. Only priests could go in there. Into the temple itself only after special purification ceremonies. And into the rear section of the temple, the Holy of Holies, only the high priest could go in only once a year. The back part of the building. The temple is at once a symbol of God's closeness. He's come to live with you, and of his distance. You can't just walk in and see him. Approaching Herodion, which is another of Herod's amazing fortresses out here in the desert. It's fascinating for us because it gives us an insight into the landscape around here. and again shows us more about King Herod and what he was like. So I'm looking forward to exploring the Herodium with you. We've got an outstanding model here to help us understand the site we're visiting. Down the bottom is the lower palace. Can you see it here? So you've got various beautiful buildings with colonnades, and in the centre this amazing swimming pool with a little kind of house in the middle for serving drinks from. It's quite lavish and luxurious, isn't it? You've got a racing track along here, and space for people to watch. But then you've got this hill that's been built up to provide a really strong defensive point. You can't undermine the walls of the fortress because it's surrounded by all the dirt. And then you've got a theatre halfway down and a big tomb. When he died, he was scared that people were going to celebrate instead of mourn. He arranged to build a massive tomb here at the Herodium. This is Herod's lower palace. This is where he'd have the big parties. And that's actually, it looks small because we're a long way away, but that pool is huge. Deep enough to drown in and bigger than any Olympic pool. And so that was the centrepiece for lots of swimming parties. But Herod had his summer palace up here because his winter palace was in Jericho, down near the Dead Sea. It never gets cold down there, so that was a nice place for his winter palace. But this is such high land here that it never gets hot here.
Like prison.
So here's a model again to help us visualise what we're seeing here. So you can see how there's all this earth built up around the fortress. Then there's these round towers. You can see this big round tower over there. You see another round tower just here. And then directly on the other side, you see a tower over there. So there's all these round towers. And this means that you've got covering fire on anyone attacking from any direction. This hill used to be a lot lower. Herod moved lots of mud here to build up around the fortress. And then he kept the attacking surface he kept the surface around the edge very smooth so that people couldn't attack up it, and if they did, they'd be very exposed to fire, double fire from any of these towers. So, we're actually not just in Herod's house, we're in his bathroom. So this is one of these hot rooms, one of these saunas, because it gets a bit cold around here and sometimes you need to be warmed up. So this would have had a raised floor, underfloor heating, to make it really hot in here. You'd sit here and you'd sweat away, and then you'd run in there and jump in the cold bath. Now how can we tell this is a hot room?
A hole in the roof.
There's a hole in the roof, and it's got a domed roof. If you had a flat roof, and we're all sitting here sweating away, then you'll start to get little droplets of sweat forming and dropping on your head. If you have a domed roof, it'll run down the sides. Isn't that clever? So this area here would have been open to the sky. The rest of it was roofed. But this had columns around the edge to support just a partial roof, and it gave Herod somewhere to walk around and reflect on the fact that everyone kept trying to kill him and he had to kill him first. So, this originally was Herod's dining room. But when it was his dining room, he wouldn't have had these benches around the edge. These benches were added later on. At the end of that was when Jerusalem was destroyed. But the guys who led the rebellion against Rome were both nationalists, but also deeply religious. So when they took over fortresses like this and like Masada, they built synagogues there, so they could be worshipping whilst fighting. And they also built ritual baths. We'll see some of those in a moment. These were the zealots. Barabbas seems to have been one of these. And also Simon the Zealot, Jesus. So how do we get water here? And the answer is below us here. There's huge caves. So when it does have a flash storm here, it does happen, the water can be stored in these systems. Okay, now we're going to head down into the tunnels, into the water system.
I'm gonna be cold like outside.
It's nice and cool down there.
Thank you. I'm really scared of bashing my head again.
It's a better temperature, right? Yeah.
How long is this going? Is it going like in big spiral?
Yeah. Crazy, yeah? But look at the difference between the wall and the floor. The walls are plastered, the floor's limestone. The development of being able to plaster things meant that they could make these cisterns. Otherwise the water would drain away through the limestone. Now through here you've got the proper system. Can I have a look at this? So this is huge. And this one would have been the same as that. And there was a third one the same size. Million litres in each of these. And so they had this huge reservoir of water inside the mountain in case they were besieged, so they wouldn't run out of water. This is a solid fortress. Now the water in the systems isn't going to be so nice though. In the Bible there's three sorts of water sources. The best is a spring. It just bubbles up fresh water. Then there's a well. You have to dig it out maybe. But then there's a cistern. A cistern, you have to dig it out. It's hard work. Imagine the work involved in digging this out. You have to line the walls with plaster so that it's watertight. But then the water you have in there sits there. It doesn't move. So it's in danger of going stagnant and bad. But the worst thing would be to dig this out and then not to plaster it properly. So the rain comes, but there's cracks in the plaster. And after all your hard work, the water drains away and you're left with nothing. After the first rebellion against Rome, there was a second rebellion against Rome in 132. And during that time, this place was an important base. You can see the seats, you can see the stage. Behind us here is where the royal chambers would have been. You can see it's a very luxurious complex, wasn't it? The Herod can have shows happening and all this sort of thing in his house. The route that we're going into Bethlehem means that we're avoiding the big checkpoints because we're travelling on a road that only Israeli plated vehicles are allowed to travel on. We have a yellow and black number plates, and that means that we're allowed to travel on roads that vehicles with green number plates aren't allowed to travel on. Vehicles with green number plates belong to Palestinians. There's a number of roads that if they drive on they'll get stopped by the army. As we head into this part of the world, we're heading into an area with a lot of pain and sadness. We don't understand the situation and we won't figure it out in the next 24 hours. We come here to listen and to learn, not to teach. Let me tell you the stories of two of my friends and you'll understand how painful the situation is for many people. Aaron is from a Jewish background and moved to this area because he sees it as his historical homeland. One day he was walking along the road to meet a friend, and when he got there, he got there and found that a bomb had just gone off and his friend had been killed along with a number of other people by a suicide bomber. And so he sees the world as a very threatening place, determined to kill him and his family, and he thinks fences and walls are a good thing. My friend Sammy, his family have lived in Bethlehem for as many generations as you can go back. As a young man, as a teenager, he was arrested on suspicion of throwing rocks at soldiers. He was held for 6 months without trial or charge or evidence, tortured with electric shocks and by being beaten over the head with rifle butts, and eventually released without charge. As you can imagine, experiencing that as a young man, that's pretty rough. It makes him see the world as a rather threatening place, but sees the other side as rather threatening. He became a Christian whilst he was in prison, and carries no anger, has forgiven those who were against him, but he lives this side of the fence and the wall and is very frustrated that he can't leave this area, and very frustrated to see the way that it's destroyed the jobs and livelihoods of many of his friends. Two very different men with very different perspectives and experiences on the situation out here. Both would love peace and both have stories to tell.
Bethlehem in English is just a few words about the name. It's one word in English, but it's two words in Hebrew or Arabic. House of bread in Hebrew and house of meat in Arabic. We are visiting the Church of Nativity, built on the grotto where baby was born. We have the church with the three denominations, three churches active. So we see three crosses: Catholic, Greek, Armenian. The door is small door. Used to be very big. That's the real door up. Is it in Europe?
Yes.
You are coming away. Church built on the cave, on the stable, where we believe baby Jesus was born. This is the floor, 1,700 years old. And we have three churches work together. This is the Greeks. We smell incense, oil lamps. Dutch, please keep going, otherwise you'll be stuck inside. Thank you. We have big group coming in.